The day everything changed started like any other rotation on the observation deck. My name is Vrell, and I serve as the primary xenobiologist aboard the survey vessel Quantum Moth. For 3 cycles we had been monitoring the third planet of this unremarkable yellow star, studying the dominant species that called themselves humans. Fascinating creatures, really. Bipedal, mostly hairless, prone to making terrible decisions and absolutely terrifying in ways we had not even begun to understand. My assistant Kip was hunched over the visual scanners, his 3 eye stalks focused on different screens simultaneously. The kid was young, barely 200 rotations old, and still thought he knew everything about xenobiology. Spoiler alert, he did not. "Vrell, you need to see this," Kip said, his vocal sac vibrating with what I had learned to recognize as excitement mixed with mild panic. That combination never meant anything good. I shuffled over to his station, my lower appendages making soft clicking sounds against the metal floor. What now? Did another one of them ingest toxic plant matter for recreation? No, this is different. Watch the feed from Settlement Zone 7 subsection Markle. The screen flickered to life, showing a typical human gathering space they called a park. Green vegetation everywhere, small humans running around screaming for no apparent reason, and adults standing in clusters doing whatever it was adults did. Standard observation material, nothing unusual. I was about to tell Kip he was wasting my time when I saw it. 2 humans approached each other. Both were adult specimens, 1 male, 1 female, based on our classification system. They stopped approximately 0.5 meters apart, made direct eye contact, which in most civilized species would be considered a threat display, and then it happened. They wrapped their upper appendages around each other. Tightly, very tightly. By the void I whispered, my respiratory systems momentarily forgetting how to function properly. "Kip, are you recording this?" Yes, of course." "Vrell, what are they doing? Is this an attack?" I watched, transfixed as the 2 humans held the position for several seconds. Neither was attempting to escape. Neither was calling for assistance. The smaller humans nearby were not fleeing in terror. If anything, they seemed completely unbothered by the violent display happening right in front of them. "I do not know," I admitted, which was not something I enjoyed saying. "But look at the positioning. The male has secured his appendages around the female's torso, restricting her movement. She has done the same to him. It is a mutual restraint technique, but they are not fighting," Kip observed, his eye stalks tilting in confusion. "Where is the violence? The bloodshed? The screaming? Perhaps it has not started yet. Keep watching." We did. For another 5 seconds the humans remained locked in their bizarre embrace. Then, and this was the part that made my internal organs shift uncomfortably, they slowly released each other. Smile. Yes, they exposed their teeth at each other, which in every reasonable species meant aggression, and then walked away together as if nothing had happened. "What in the name of the Galactic Council was that?" Kip asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I think, I said slowly, my mind trying to process what we had just witnessed. "I think we just observed a human combat hold. But nobody got hurt." "Exactly. Which means it is a restraint technique. A way to immobilize an opponent without causing damage. Kip, do you understand what this means?" His eye stalks drooped. "Not really, no." I turned to face him, all 4 of my primary eyes focused on his young, naive face. "It means humans have developed non-lethal combat techniques so efficient, so refined, that they can execute them in public spaces with witnesses, and nobody even reacts. They practice their warfare in plain sight. That is actually horrifying when you put it like that. It gets worse. Pull up the archives. Search for similar physical contact patterns. I want to know how widespread this technique is." Kip worked his controls with practiced efficiency, his appendages flying across the interface. Within moments the screens around us filled with images and video feeds from various monitoring stations, and there, in almost every single feed we saw it. Humans engaging in the restraint hold, sometimes with family units, sometimes with what appeared to be friends or associates, sometimes even with complete strangers. "Vrell," Kip said, his voice trembling slightly, "it is everywhere. Every settlement, every gathering, every social interaction. They are constantly practicing combat holds on each other." I felt a cold sensation spread through my core. Of course they are. How else would they maintain such proficiency? These humans are not just warriors. They are a species in a constant state of combat readiness. Should we report this to command? Absolutely. But first we need more data. We need to understand the full extent of their techniques. I pulled up a new feed, This one from a human structure they called a home. Inside, a small human child ran toward an adult female, arms outstretched. The adult knelt down and the child basically launched itself at her, wrapping its tiny appendages around her neck. A chokehold, I breathed. The child is practicing a chokehold. They start training them young. But the adult is smiling, Kip pointed out. She looks happy? Is that happiness? Stockholm Syndrome, perhaps. Or maybe she is proud of the child's technique. Look at how the child has positioned its weight. If that were an enemy, they would be completely off balance. We continued watching, and the evidence kept mounting. Humans at their places of employment would engage in brief versions of the hold, usually accompanied by backpatting, which we theorized might be a way to check for weapons or weak points in armor. Humans greeting each other after periods of separation would execute the hold with particular intensity, sometimes even lifting each other off the ground entirely. Look at this one, Kip said, directing my attention to a new feed. Two male humans, both large specimens, approached each other outside a human drinking establishment. They grabbed each other in what looked like a modified version of the hold, adding a vigorous shaking motion and loud vocalization. That is clearly a dominance display, I said, making notes on my datapad. Notice how they are testing each other's strength. The shaking motion is designed to disorient the opponent, but then they go inside together and consume fermented liquids. Of course, they have established their relative positions in the hierarchy. Now they can socialize without the threat of actual combat. Brilliant, really. Brutal but brilliant. I was about to continue my analysis when Captain Thorne's voice crackled over the communication system. Vrell, report to the command deck immediately. We have a situation. Kip and I exchanged glances. Well, I glanced. He sort of eye-stalked. Same difference. The command deck was in controlled mayhem when we arrived. Captain Thorne, a four-armed Valkyrian with enough combat experience to fill 3 lifetimes, stood at the central console looking more stressed than I had ever seen her. Vrell. Good. I need your expertise. We have just received a transmission from the human planet. They are inviting us to make first contact. My respiratory system stopped again. This was becoming a bad habit. First contact? Captain, I do not think that is wise. We have only been observing them for 3 cycles. We do not understand their culture, their social structures, their combat capabilities. Noted. But the decision has been made at a level far above my authority. The Council wants peaceful relations with humanity. Something about their technological advancement rate being unprecedented. We make contact in 6 hours. 6 hours? I felt dizzy. Captain, please, you need to understand. These humans are dangerous. They practice combat techniques constantly. Even their offspring are trained in restraint holds. Their entire society is built around physical dominance and combat readiness. Captain Thorne's upper arms crossed while her lower arms worked the controls. Really, I respect your scientific opinion, but these observations seem inconclusive. Inconclusive? I pulled up my datapad and started showing her the footage. Captain, look, this is not battle training. This is casual, everyday interaction. They are so comfortable with violence that they incorporate it into their basic social exchanges. She watched the footage, her expression growing more concerned with each clip. A small human hugging a pet animal, an elderly human embracing a younger one. 2 humans meeting for the first time and immediately engaging in the hold after a brief verbal exchange. I see your point, she said slowly. But if we refuse the meeting, it could be seen as an insult. Worse, it could be seen as a sign of weakness. And if we attend the meeting and accidentally trigger their combat response, then we better make sure we understand their protocols. Vrell, Kip, you have 6 hours to learn everything you can about human greeting rituals and combat etiquette. I want a full briefing before we send the landing party down. The next few hours passed in a blur of research, analysis, and increasing dread. We watched hundreds of hours of footage, documenting every variation of the human restraint hold we could find. We identified at least 20 distinct variations, each seemingly used in different social contexts. There was the standard frontal hold, which we had initially observed. Then there was the side-by-side hold, where humans would wrap a single appendage around each other while walking together. The quick hold, lasting only a second or 2, used in professional settings. The group hold, where multiple humans would pile their appendages on each other in what looked like a tactical coordination exercise. This is insane, Kip muttered, his eye-stalks drooping with exhaustion. How do they keep track of all these different techniques? Practice, I said grimly. Constant, relentless practice from birth until death. Kip, look at this footage from their medical facilities. Even humans on life support systems engage in the hold with their visitors. It is literally the last thing some of them do before dying. That is actually kind of sad when you phrase it that way. Sad? It is terrifying. Their dedication to maintaining combat readiness extends to their final moments of consciousness. What kind of species does that? A voice behind us made us both jump. The kind of species that survives, Captain Thorne said, walking up to our station. I have been reading your reports, Vrell. Your analysis is thorough, but I think you might be missing something. What could I possibly be missing, Captain? She gestured at the screens showing various humans engaged in their holds. Look at their facial expressions, their body language. Does this look like combat to you? It is non-lethal combat, Captain. Of course they are not going to show aggression. That would defeat the purpose of the stealth training. Or, she said carefully, it could be something else entirely. Like what? I do not know, but we are about to find out. The landing party leaves in 30 minutes. I want you both on the shuttle. Captain, I really must protest. Noted. Get your equipment ready. That is an order. 28 minutes later I found myself strapped into a shuttle seat, trying very hard not to let my organs evacuate my body through sheer terror. Kip sat next to me, looking equally miserable. Across from us, 3 security officers checked their weapons and defensive equipment. Captain Thorne sat at the front, reviewing the briefing materials on her datapad. Remember the protocol, she said as we entered the atmosphere. No sudden movements. Maintain respectful distance. Do not, under any circumstances, touch the humans unless absolutely necessary for survival. What about if they try to engage us in a restraint hold? One of the security officers asked. Then you let them. Better to be temporarily restrained than to start an interstellar incident. The shuttle landed smoothly in what the humans called a field outside one of their major population centers. Through the viewports I could see a small group of humans waiting for us. 5 of them, all adults, standing in a loose formation that could quickly become defensive if needed. The shuttle door opened, and Captain Thorne let us out. The human atmosphere was actually quite pleasant, which was somehow more unsettling than if it had been hostile. We walked toward the human delegation, and I tried to catalog every detail. Their posture, their expression, their hand positions, any sign of impending combat. The human in the front, a tall female with dark skin and bright eyes, stepped forward. She was smiling, teeth fully visible. Threat display or greeting? Impossible to tell. Welcome to Earth, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the space between us. I am Ambassador Lisa Morgan. On behalf of humanity, we are honored to meet you. Captain Thorne stopped at what she deemed a safe distance. I am Captain Thorne of the Galactic Survey Fleet. We appreciate your invitation. Please come closer. We will not bite. The human, Morgan, laughed at her own words. Several other humans made similar sounds. Humor, apparently. Nothing about this situation was humorous from my perspective. We moved closer, maintaining our defensive spacing. Morgan looked at each of us, her eyes lingering on me for a moment. You must be the science team. I understand you have been observing us for some time. Correct, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We have conducted extensive studies of your species and your social behaviors. Wonderful. Then you probably know a lot about human customs already. Tell me, what do humans typically do when meeting someone for the first time? This was it. The test. She was checking to see if we understood their combat protocols. You engage in physical restraint techniques, I said carefully. Mutual appendage wrapping to establish dominance hierarchies and combat readiness. There was a long silence. The humans looked at each other. Then, and this was the most terrifying part, they started making those laughing sounds again. Loud ones. Morgan actually bent forward slightly, her whole body shaking with the sound. Oh my stars, she said between laughs. You think hugging is a combat technique? Hugging. So that was what they called it. Is it not? Kip asked quietly beside me. Morgan wiped at her eyes and tried to compose herself. No, it is definitely not. Hugging is how we show affection, love, care. It is like, she paused, thinking. It is like a physical expression of friendship and family bonds. I felt my understanding of the universe shift slightly. Affection? You restrain each other to show affection. We do not restrain each other. We embrace, hold, comfort. It is one of the most important parts of being human. But the children practice on adults. The adults practice on each other constantly. Your entire society loves hugs, yes. We are a tactile species. Physical touch is how we connect with each other. Captain Thorne made a sound that might have been a laugh or a groan. Vrell, your entire combat theory is based on humans showing each other affection? It appears so, Captain. Morgan stepped forward, and I resisted the urge to step back. Would you like a demonstration? I promise it is not scary. Well, usually not scary. I am not certain. How about this? She said gently. If you are comfortable with it, I will show you what a hug feels like. If you hate it, we never do it again. If you like it, well, welcome to being friends with humans. I looked at Captain Thorne. She nodded slightly, giving me permission to proceed with this potentially deadly first contact protocol. Taking what might be my last few breaths of unrestrained air, I stepped forward. Ambassador Morgan moved slowly, telegraphing every motion. She extended her arms, wrapped them gently around my torso, and pulled me close. Her body was warm against mine. Her appendages were firm but not restrictive, and she was making a soft humming sound that seemed to resonate through both of us. It lasted maybe 5 seconds. Then she released me and stepped back. So? What did you think? I stood there, processing. My threat assessment systems were completely confused. Every combat prediction model I had was showing errors, and yet somehow I felt calmer, less anxious, possibly even safe. That was not combat, I said slowly. No, Morgan agreed, smiling. That genuine human smile I was starting to understand. That was a hug. Welcome to Earth, Vrell. Behind me, I could hear Kip muttering something about rewriting his entire dissertation. Captain Thorne was making notes on her datapad, probably documenting the most embarrassing intelligence failure in recent galactic history. And me, I was realizing that humans were far more dangerous than we ever imagined. Not because they had secret combat techniques, but because they had figured out how to weaponize affection. One hug, and I already wanted to trust them, to work with them, to protect. These humans were going to be either the best thing or the worst thing to happen to the galaxy. Possibly both. Ambassador Morgan, Captain Thorne said, stepping forward. I believe we have much to learn from each other. I believe you are right, Captain. Now who wants a tour of the city? Fair warning, humans are going to want to hug all of you at some point. We are just like that. As we walked toward the waiting vehicles, I realized my entire report would need to be rewritten. 3 cycles of careful observation, detailed analysis, and tactical assessment, all based on the fundamental misunderstanding that physical affection was combat training. I had never been so happy to be so completely wrong. The human city was overwhelming in ways I had not anticipated. Tall structures reaching toward the sky, vehicles moving at speeds that seemed unnecessarily dangerous, and humans everywhere. Hundreds of them, thousands, all walking around completely unaware that a group of aliens was currently having an existential crisis in their midst. Stay close to the group, Captain Thorne instructed as we followed Ambassador Morgan down what humans called a sidewalk. And remember, no matter what happens, try not to look terrified. Too late for that, Kip whispered beside me, his eye stalks swiveling in every direction, trying to track all the potential threats, which, given my recent revelations about human behavior, might actually be 0 threats. My threat assessment systems were still recalibrating. Morgan led us toward a large building with glass walls. This is our civic center. We have arranged for you to meet some of our citizens, share a meal, and hopefully answer questions on both sides. Sound good? Define good, I muttered. But Captain Thorne shot me a look that suggested I should keep my scientific pessimism to myself. We entered the building, and immediately I noticed something odd. Well, odd in addition to everything else. Every human we passed would look at us. Their faces would transform into expressions of excitement or curiosity, and many of them would raise their appendages in various gestures as we walked by. One human lifted a single appendage, all 5 digits extended, and waved it back and forth. Another made a gesture with just the thumb digit extended upward. A small group of younger humans actually started making high-pitched sounds and bouncing on their lower appendages. What are they doing? Kip asked, pressing closer to me. Is that aggression? Excitement? A warning? I have no idea. Ambassador, why are your people making those gestures at us? Morgan looked back, following my gaze to a human who was enthusiastically waving both appendages above their head. Oh, they are just being friendly? Waving hello, giving thumbs up to show they are happy to see you. Humans are very expressive. Expressive, I repeated, adding another term to my growing list of human behavioral patterns that made no logical sense. We entered a large room filled with tables, chairs, and approximately 40 humans who all turned to look at us simultaneously. The sound level in the room dropped dramatically. Then, as if someone had given a signal I could not detect, all 40 humans stood up and started making that clapping sound, striking their appendages together repeatedly while making loud vocalizations. I may have made a small sound of distress. "It is applause," Morgan said quickly, noticing my reaction. "They are showing appreciation for your visit. It is a good thing, I promise. Your species has far too many ways of striking body parts together," I said, trying to keep my composure. "It is very stressful for outside observers." Morgan laughed again. "Humans seem to find everything amusing. You have not seen anything yet. Wait until someone tries to give you a high five." "Oh, what now?" "I will explain later. Come on, let us get you seated. We have prepared some foods that our research suggests should be compatible with your biology. Nothing weird, I promise." "Well, nothing too weird." The meal that followed was actually pleasant, which surprised me more than anything else that day. The food was acceptable. The humans at our table were genuinely curious about our species and culture, and nobody tried to restrain anyone in an affectionate hold. Small victory. I was speaking with a human named Marcus, an older male with gray hair and what humans called a beard, when he suddenly extended his right appendage across the table toward me, digits curled into his palm, except for one. "What is happening?" I asked, staring at his extended appendage. "Fist bump," Marcus said cheerfully. "Come on, make a fist and bump it against mine. It is a sign of respect and friendship." "You want me to strike your appendage with mine?" "Well, when you say it like that, it sounds aggressive. But yes, essentially." I looked at Captain Thorne, who seemed equally baffled but nodded slightly. Slowly, carefully, I curled my primary grasping appendage into a similar configuration and extended it toward Marcus. Our appendages made contact with a soft thump. Marcus grinned, showing all his teeth again. "Nice. You are getting the hang of human customs already." "Am I though?" I said, pulling my appendage back and examining it for damage. "Because from my perspective, your species has invented approximately 700 different ways to make physical contact with each other, and I understand maybe 3 of them." 700 is probably low, another human at the table said. This one was a younger female named Taylor. "We have not even gotten to handshakes, head pats, shoulder touches, the weird thing where guys punch each other in the arm, or, and this is my personal favorite, the awkward moment when you go for a hug and the other person goes for a handshake." I understood perhaps 30% of those words, Kip said, his eye stalks drooping with exhaustion. "It is okay," Taylor said kindly. "Human physical contact customs are complicated even for us. Add in cultural variations and regional differences, and it gets really confusing really fast." Marcus leaned back in his chair, stroking his beard thoughtfully. "You know what I think would help? You should meet my mother. She loves meeting new people, and she gives the best hugs in the entire city. Probably the whole continent." "Your mother?" I asked cautiously. "Is she some kind of combat instructor? A diplomat, perhaps?" "What? No, she is a retired teacher, but she is very friendly. Aggressively friendly, if I am being honest. Fair warning. She will probably try to feed you and adopt you within the first 10 minutes. Humans can adopt other species?" Captain Thorne asked, suddenly very interested. "Is this a political alliance mechanism?" "More like an emotional thing," Marcus explained. "My mom just loves taking care of people. Any people. All people. She once tried to adopt a fully grown delivery driver, because he mentioned he was having a bad day. This was concerning on multiple levels. Ambassador Morgan, is this normal human behavior?" Morgan, who had been speaking with one of our security officers, turned back to our conversation. "Is what normal? Oh, you are talking about meeting someone's mom. Yeah, that is pretty normal." "Marcus, is your mother still in the building?" "She is in the kitchen. Insisted on helping prepare the food. Said she could not trust anyone else to properly season the vegetables." "Of course she did." Morgan smiled affectionately. "Would you like to meet her? I promise she is harmless. Mostly harmless. She might hug you a lot." I looked at Kip. He looked at me. We both looked at Captain Thorne, silently begging her to save us from this situation. She simply raised one of her appendages in what she probably thought was a human shrug gesture. "When on Earth?" she said, mangling what I assumed was a human saying. Marcus led us toward the back of the building, through several corridors that smelled increasingly like cooked food. The kitchen area was large and filled with various cooking devices and preparation surfaces, and there, in the middle of it all, was a small human female with silver hair and an apron covered in colorful patterns. "Marcus, baby," she called out when she saw us enter. Her voice was loud and warm and somehow managed to fill the entire space. "You brought the aliens." Oh, they are even more adorable than the pictures. Look at those eye stalks. And the tentacles. Oh my stars, come here all of you. Before I could process what was happening, the small human female had crossed the distance between us and was reaching toward me with both appendages. I am Marcus's mother, but everyone calls me Dotty. You can too. Now come here and let me give you a proper welcome. She wrapped her appendages around me with surprising strength for someone her size. The embrace was firm, warm, and accompanied by a gentle rocking motion that I realized was meant to be soothing. She smelled like something sweet and spicy and completely alien yet somehow comforting. There we go, she said softly, patting my back with one appendage while maintaining the hold with the other. I bet you have had a very confusing day, haven't you, sweetie? All these new experiences and strange customs. But you are doing great, just great. Something inside my chest region felt strange. Not painful, not threatening. Just warm, emotional. I did not have the proper terminology for this sensation. She released me and immediately moved to Kip, repeating the process. And look at you with your pretty eye stalks. Are you getting enough to eat, dear? You look thin. Do your people eat carbohydrates? I made fresh bread. Yes. We can process carbohydrates, Kip managed to say, looking as confused as I felt. Dotty hugged Captain Thorne next, who stood very still and seemed unsure how to respond. Then she moved to our security officers, each one receiving the same treatment. By the time she finished, all of us were standing in the kitchen looking somewhat dazed. Now then, Dotty said, wiping her appendages on her apron. Marcus tells me you have been studying humans but maybe got some things confused. Is that right? We believed your embraces were combat training techniques, I admitted, feeling somewhat foolish saying it out loud. Dotty's face transformed into an expression I was learning to recognize as sympathetic understanding. Oh honey, no. Hugs are love. Plain and simple. We hug because sometimes words are not enough to tell someone we care about them. You understand? I am beginning to, I said quietly. Good. Now I know your report probably has all sorts of scientific observations and data, but let me tell you something important about humans. One living being to another. She moved closer, her voice gentle but firm. We are tactile creatures because we are social creatures. We need connection, physical, emotional, mental, the hugs, the handshakes, the high fives, all of it. That is us trying to bridge the gap between individuals. To say, I see you, I acknowledge you, you matter. Captain Thorne made a soft sound. That is actually quite beautiful. It is survival, Dotty corrected. Humans do not do well in isolation. We need each other. The physical contact reminds us we are not alone. Even when things are scary or confusing or overwhelming, a hug can help. It says, I am here with you. I thought about all the footage I had analyzed. The humans embracing in grief, in joy, in comfort, in celebration. Every single instance recontextualized with this new understanding. We have been completely wrong about your species, I said. Not completely, Dotty said kindly. You were right that we are always practicing these behaviors. You just misunderstood why. We practice because it matters. Because connection matters. Marcus stepped forward, his appendage resting gently on his mother's shoulder. Mom has always been good at explaining these things. She taught elementary school for 40 years, spent most of that time hugging kids who needed it, and teaching them how to be kind to each other. Important work, Captain Thorne said respectfully. The most important, Dotty agreed. Now I know this is a lot to process, so how about this? You all come back to the dining area, eat some of my cooking, and we will teach you some basic human greeting customs. The fun ones. No pressure, no stress, just learning and maybe some laughing. What do you say? I looked at my team. Kip was already nodding. The security officers seemed cautiously interested. Captain Thorne had that expression she got when she was pretending she had not already made her decision several minutes ago. That would be acceptable, I said formally, then added, Thank you, Dotty. Her face lit up with genuine happiness. Oh, sweetie, you are so welcome. Come on then, all of you. Time for cultural education human style. The next 2 hours were simultaneously the most educational and most ridiculous period of my entire career. Dotty, with assistance from Marcus, Taylor, and several other humans, taught us the intricacies of human physical greetings. We learned handshakes, which involved gripping another being's appendage and moving it up and down in a motion that apparently dated back thousands of years in human history. We learned high fives, which required precise timing and spatial awareness to properly strike appendages together in midair. We learned fist bumps, which were apparently the more casual version of handshakes. We learned about back pats, shoulder touches, and the complex social mathematics that determined when each was appropriate. We learned that humans had different contact customs for family, friends, acquaintances, and strangers. We learned that some humans did not like being touched at all, and that was perfectly acceptable and must be respected. It is all about consent and comfort, Taylor explained as she demonstrated a side hug, which was apparently less intense than a regular hug. You always ask permission, especially with people you do not know well, and if someone says no, you respect that immediately. No questions asked. Your species has rules for affection, Kip asked, his eye stalks perking up with interest. This was something he could understand. Rules, structure, logic. Of course we do, Marcus said. Just because we are touchy-feely does not mean we are disrespectful. Consent is huge in human culture. Has to be. Otherwise the whole physical affection thing would be awful instead of wonderful. I made detailed notes on my datapad documenting everything. This information would be crucial for future diplomatic relations. But more than that, I found myself genuinely fascinated by the complexity of human social interaction. So let me verify my understanding, Captain Thorne said, practicing a handshake with one of the security officers. Physical contact serves multiple purposes in human society. It establishes social bonds, communicates emotional states, provides comfort during stress, celebrates achievements, and reinforces community connections. That is it exactly. Dotty confirmed, beaming with pride like Captain Thorne had just passed some kind of test. You understand perfectly. And the variations in contact type correspond to relationship closeness and social context, I added, watching two humans demonstrate the difference between a professional handshake and a friendly arm clasp. Right again, Marcus said. Though fair warning, humans are not always consistent about this. Cultural background, personal preference, and situational factors all play a role. It is complicated. Everything about your species is complicated, Kip muttered, but he was smiling. Or at least making the expression his species used to indicate pleasure. As the day progressed into evening, more humans filtered into the civic center. They had heard about the alien visitors and wanted to meet us. Each one approached with caution and respect, asking permission before initiating any physical contact. Several requested hugs, which we granted. Others settled for handshakes or fist bumps. A few were content to simply wave from a distance. One small human child, perhaps 6 or 7 years old, based on my understanding of human development, approached me timidly. She had dark curly hair and was clutching a stuffed animal that appeared to be a representation of an earth bear. Excuse me, Mr. Alien, she said in a quiet voice. Are you from space? I am, I confirmed, adjusting my stance to be closer to her height level. My name is Vrell. What is your name? Emily. This is Mr. Snuggles. She held up the stuffed animal. He wanted to meet you too. I am honored to meet you both, Emily and Mr. Snuggles. She shifted from one foot to the other, clearly working up courage for something. Can I hug you? My mom says I always have to ask first. Your mother is very wise. Yes, Emily, you may hug me. She stepped forward and wrapped her small appendages around me as far as they would reach, which was not very far given our size difference. Her embrace was gentle and brief. When she stepped back, she was smiling. You are nice, she declared with the absolute certainty only human children seem to possess. I hope you like our planet. I am starting to, I admitted. Thank you for the hug, Emily. She skipped back to her parents, who were watching with proud expressions. The father gave me a thumbs-up gesture. I attempted to return it, though I was fairly certain my appendage configuration made it look strange. That was sweet, Kip said, moving to stand beside me. Human offspring are quite endearing once you get past the initial terror of their unpredictability. Agreed. Kip, I need to rewrite my entire report. I know. Me too. 3 cycles of observation, all based on fundamental misunderstanding of human behavior. Not entirely misunderstanding, I corrected. We were right about the importance of these physical interactions to human society. We simply misidentified their purpose. Combat training versus affection expression. Pretty significant difference, Vrell. Point taken. Captain Thorne approached us. Her appendages crossed in a relaxed posture I had not seen her use before. The diplomatic team on the ship has been reviewing our data. They are simultaneously impressed by our thoroughness and baffled by our conclusion. Are we in trouble? I asked. The opposite, actually. Command is pleased we made contact and established friendly relations despite our initial confusion. Apparently our cautious approach and willingness to learn has made a positive impression on the humans. They appreciate that we took their behavior seriously even if we interpreted them incorrectly. That is surprisingly understanding of them. Humans value effort and good intentions, Morgan said, joining our conversation. She had been coordinating with her own government throughout the day. You came here thinking we were a warrior species constantly training for combat, and you still chose peaceful contact over avoidance or aggression. That says good things about your people. We came here terrified you would restrain us in combat holds, I pointed out. And when we did, you let us, because you valued potential friendship over potential safety. That takes courage, Vrell. Real courage. I had not thought about it that way. I suppose it does. So here is what happens next, Morgan continued. We would like to continue cultural exchange. Send some humans up to your ship, bring more of your people down here, learn from each other, build an actual relationship based on accurate understanding instead of wild speculation. I think that would be beneficial for everyone involved, Captain Thorne agreed. Though I recommend we include detailed briefings on human physical contact customs for anyone coming to Earth. Some species are not going to adapt as quickly as we did. Fair point. We can prepare informational materials, maybe some video demonstrations. Oh, and we should probably warn people about Dotty. As if summoned by her name, the small human female appeared with a large container of food. I packed some things for your trip back to the ship. Cookies, some sandwiches, fruit. You all need to keep your strength up. You did not have to do that, Captain Thorne said, though she accepted the container gratefully. Of course I did. You are all far from home, probably eating whatever processed spaceship food you have up there. Everyone deserves home-cooked meals. She looked at each of us seriously. And you all better come visit again soon. I mean it. I want to hear all about your planets and your families and what foods you like. Promise me. We promise, I said and meant it. She hugged each of us again, these farewells somehow even warmer than the greetings had been. When she reached me, she held on for an extra moment. You are going to do great things, she whispered. I can tell. You have a good heart, Vrell, even if it is shaped differently than ours. Thank you, I managed to say. Past the unexpected emotional response her words triggered. You have taught me much to— Just the beginning, sweetie. Just the beginning. The shuttle ride back to the Quantum Moth was quiet. We were all processing the day's events, trying to integrate our new understanding of humanity into our existing frameworks. It would take time, possibly a long time. Vrell, Kip said as we approached the ship. Do you think other species will understand when we explain what we learned about humans? Some will think we have gone soft or been compromised. Some will need to experience it themselves to believe it. What about you? What do you believe? I thought about Emily and her stuffed bear, about Marcus and his mother, about Ambassador Morgan and her patience with our confusion, about Dotty and her aggressive kindness, about an entire species that had weaponized not violence but connection. I believe, I said slowly, that humans are exactly as dangerous as we initially thought, just not in the way we expected. How so? Any species that can make strangers feel like family with a simple embrace, that can bridge vast differences with a handshake, that can transmit hope and comfort through physical touch. That species has power, real power, the kind that changes worlds. Captain Thorne was listening. You think they will change the galaxy? I think they already are. We came here prepared to document a warrior species. Instead, we found something far more remarkable. We found a species that fights against isolation itself. And I suspect that before long, the entire galaxy is going to learn what it means to be hugged by humanity. That is either beautiful or terrifying, Kip said. Both, I confirmed. Definitely both. The shuttle docked, and we disembarked into the familiar environment of our ship. Everything was exactly as we had left it, but somehow everything felt different. We were different. I carried the container of food Dotty had given us to the observation deck. Through the viewport I could see Earth rotating peacefully below. Somewhere down there, humans were hugging their families, greeting their friends, comforting strangers, and practicing 700 different varieties of physical affection. And now we knew why. My datapad beeped with an incoming message. Ambassador Morgan, sending a follow-up communication. I opened it and found a simple text message followed by an attached image. The message read, "Thank you for visiting. Come back soon. Earth will always welcome you." The image showed our entire group together in the Civic Center. Humans and aliens standing side by side. Some were mid-handshake, others had appendages around shoulder. At the center, Dotty had both her appendages raised in celebration, and somehow the photographer had captured us all at a moment when we were genuinely happy. I stared at the image for a long time, committing every detail to memory. This would be the first image in my new report, not as evidence of combat training or tactical assessment, but as proof that sometimes the greatest discoveries come from being completely wrong about everything and then being humble enough to learn the truth. Kip appeared beside me looking at the image over my shoulder. You know what the best part is? What? We thought we were studying them. Turns out they were teaching us the whole time. I smiled, an expression I had learned from watching humans all day. That is exactly what friends do, Kip. They teach each other. They learn from each other. They embrace each other's differences instead of fearing them. Literally embrace in humanity's case. Literally embrace. I agree. The quantum moth began moving away from Earth, heading back to our regular survey route. But everything had changed. In a few cycles, our report would reach the Galactic Council. They would learn what we learn. And then, slowly but inevitably, humanity would extend its embrace to the stars themselves. I had no idea what that would look like. But for the first time in my career, I was not approaching the unknown with fear. I was approaching it with curiosity, with hope, with the memory of a small human child sharing her stuffed animal and an elderly woman insisting everyone deserved home-cooked meals. That was the real power of humanity. Not their technology, not their potential for violence, but their absolute refusal to let anyone face the universe alone. And honestly, the galaxy had no idea what was about to hit it.